Hey y'all, and welcome back to another video of My Creative Life with Kel Sweetie, where we read books, we make art, and essentially do whatever our creative hearts desire. Today, we are going to be covering my May TBR as well as my April wrap-up. It's gonna be a good amount today. April was weird. April was so weird. But let's get into it. There's a lot. So like I said, I kind of just want to get right into it. I'm excited for what my May TBR is going to be, and I really want to explain. I feel like there's a lot of conversation around choosing my TBR this month that I really want to bring up. Also, it's kind of a 2-for-1 this month, so I've got a lot of dip on my chip, to be honest. So let's get through April's wrap-up, because it was both amazing and horrible. Well, not horrible, just not great. Not what I wanted. First off, to explain what April was kind of about, you guys know I love a theme. And this month really was based on my birthday being this month. I turned 29. We've got one more year until 30. I am ready to be 30, flirty, and thriving. And as an Aries, of course, I'm going to sit here and try and prepare myself by being reflective on my last year of my 20s. So I decided, let's choose books based on things that I learned about myself during my 20s, as well as maybe poke some fun at the fact that I'm getting older. In theory, that was very reflective and cute of me, right? In practice, it's not. There were non-fictions on my TBR last month, which was strange for me. There was a romance on my TBR, which is also not usually my cup of tea, but we did it anyway. And there was also a sleeper of an indie author that I just in my last moments decided to put on there, which ended up being amazing. I was participating in Old School April, which was a reading challenge, an activity challenge based on nostalgia in the 90s and 80s and whatever have you that's nostalgic for you, that was hosted by Simon Slashers here on YouTube. She's really great. Go check her work out. Her videos are fantastic. As well as participating in over on Instagram, Apples and Alchemy, April, her name's April, she was doing a 6 Sad April challenge that had prompts that were based on Daria, which was really fun. Go over to my Instagram if you're not following me over there already, to check out what I made. I really did a lot of recommendations on books surrounding those prompts, and also basically turned myself into a Daria character and enacted those really memorable credits at the end of Daria, which was really fun. It was out of my comfort zone for how I usually draw, but it was a lot of fun and it pushed me. And I did a little wrap-up video at the end that was really fun to kind of see me have this credit scene that had me in it. It was dope. Go check it out. I'm gonna link it down below. But point is that a lot of this I was watching a lot of nostalgia shows and movies and finding it in my books somehow and everything. And I was doing a lot. And I don't think May has me doing anything less. We're still doing a lot. But we started out the gate, honestly, we started out April very, very hot. I read Mary by Nat Cassidy. Had a ball. He's a sweetheart. Oh my god, he messaged me and everything when I posted my review, and he just seems like the nicest person in the world. I don't know him personally, but shout out to any author who takes the time, no matter how big you are in the community, to kind of even to just a quick comment or anything on a review or on somebody's post about you if they tag you. Oh, people enjoy that. I personally do. I can't speak for everybody, but I personally enjoyed it. It's worth the hype. I am so happy I finally read a Nat Cassidy. I really, really loved his writing. I can't wait to read Nestlings in preparation for Rest Stop, which is coming in October. He finally announced his next book, which is coming next year. I think he has like a couple of short stories that are out right now that just recently were released. So there's a lot of Nat Cassidy out there, and I'm excited to get into it, and I'm glad that Mary was my my entrance into it all. I just feel like he really understood the assignment when he was being asked to like write about a menopausal woman who essentially has a serial killer living inside of her spirit. Amazing. I don't know if there's like, if there was an outline of what that is, killed it to a T. I feel like the voice of Mary just felt authentic. I felt like the issues and the society, as y'all know, I love a social commentary. We say that all the time. I'm gonna make stickers, I swear. He covered that. He absolutely did, and it never felt forced. It still felt so scary. It felt like true crime and mystery, and you were left guessing. You were left without information sometimes that made you uncomfortable. Shout out to the narrator from the audiobook as well. She put on a show. I absolutely enjoyed it entirely. If you have a chance to listen to the audiobook, I highly, highly recommend it. She puts on different voices and everything, and all of those voices sound authentic. Like they could be completely different people. It was so amazing. It really takes you out of like the listening and just really just visualizing the entire story. I don't want to give too much away. I feel like it's one of those things that people can tell you it's really great. It's menopausal. It's a haunting and a serial killer and a 50-year-old white woman who you just don't know what to expect, and cults. There was also a cult. I love that. And what I loved most, and I want to talk about and emphasize it here because I also emphasized it in my review, because I feel like as much as I've heard about Mary, so many booktubers and bookstagrammers and book talkers, just absolutely, Mary's amazing, blah, blah, blah. I have not heard one person mention the ending and what it represented. And I think as a woman of color, reading this book about a white woman who is going into menopause and the commentary of how our country specifically treats women after 50, that all of that information changes as you become a woman of color. It changes a lot, the commentary on it. And you have to kind of sit there and go, okay, yes, I'm experiencing this as a woman, but not necessarily a woman of color. And I felt like at the end, Nat Cassidy made a moment where he commented on that and how society and the US specifically treats women of color after a certain age, and how it is not as delicate as white women, which is a whole conversation and a longer discussion than just that comment. But I felt like I really wanted to bring that up because I feel like a lot of women of color aren't necessarily reading Mary because they're kind of saying, well, what does this have to do with me? And I fully like agree that majority of this book, absolutely all about this woman. But if you are interested at all about the fact that Nat Cassidy did full figured research and is completely aware of the other side of the coin on that, I really recommend you to just still read the book, because a certain character and what happens with her is extremely interesting, and I feel like was the perfect cherry on top to this novel. And I think that a lot of readers missed it. I feel like a lot of readers weren't looking for it and absolutely missed it. I had even some people who read my review say, oh my God, I completely missed that. I completely missed that was the commentary. And that there's some guilt followed by that. Like, wow, why did I miss that? And everything, especially as a fellow woman, why did I miss that? And it's not to guilt anybody into that realization, but more so, okay, now you recognize it. What are you going to do with that information now if it was to come up again, or knowing that information? So I just wanted to bring that up because I just felt like Nat Cassidy did just an amazing job. I mean, even in his afterword, where he talks about why a white cis heterosexual man is sitting here writing a novel about a white woman, like in the throes of menopause and everything. Who am I to talk about that? And while I don't think that he necessarily fully answered it, because I don't think that there is a perfect answer to that, I think that the awareness and the research and the commentary he brings onto even himself, to point it back at himself and go, I still have to figure that out. Why is Carrie, that's has to do with basically a girl experiencing puberty, written by a white cishet man as well, you know? And why isn't somebody who identifies as that writing about it and getting published themselves? And I appreciated that. I can at least appreciate that. I highly, highly recommend Mary. Many people recommended it probably 5 million times from now, so who am I to kind of add to that? But to add on to the pile, absolutely recommend you to go check it out if you can. I think I gave it like a 4.75 or something like that. Round it up, that's a 5. It is absolutely like a great read, and I felt like it was just moving. Like, I could so easily see this as a movie. It was so, so great. Highly recommend it. The next book that I tried to read was a memoir. I think I got big in my britches because recently I read a memoir that was amazing. I really was like blown away that I could read a memoir and really go, wow, absolutely enjoyed it. And that didn't happen. And that was with Hunger by Roxane Gay. I read it really wanting to understand and come to some like terms about me being in my body and being in our society, being in a bigger body. What I didn't realize is that this story has more to do with Roxane Gay's sexual abuse, as well as being not just in the blanketed term of a bigger body, but more specifically being in an obese body. And I did not feel comfortable necessarily reading the book for the reason that I wanted to pick up the book, which was to experience it as a reflection for myself in my body. So I ended up DNFing it because I just didn't feel like I was in the right mindset for it, and it wasn't for what I was wanting to read it for. So after that, I was just like, okay, well, that's fine. And honestly, I will at least get through about 15 to 20% before I go, no, I'm DNFing it. Something crazy has to happen before that 15 to 20 for me to DNF it earlier than that. Mainly because I just like want to give it a fair shot. So then I tried to pick up Small Change. It was not great. That one I DNF'd because I just was not connecting with it. I really, really wanted to pick up a romance novel that was male, female, cis-seeming, with the main woman character being bisexual. This was mainly because those specifics were mainly because that is my life and my experience of being queer and bisexual. And one thing that I absolutely love from The Women Could Fly is that I felt like it really broke that dynamic down, that conversation down, of being a woman who finds women sexually attractive and everything, identifies as being bisexual, but being in a relationship with a man you absolutely love to death. But seeming like you're not queer enough to a queer community and not straight enough for a straight community, or like you're a visitor in both because of just what your relationship dynamic is. And I wanted to read something like that again. Let me tell you, it's hard to find. I will be taking recommendations in the droves of any situations or stories that have bisexual women who are in a male-female relationship. Keep that in mind, because that was another problem I ran into. Had found plenty of bisexual stories. Female-female. Female-female. It was like, oh, they're bisexual. And there was a female. And it was just kind of like, great. Love that for them. Where are our stories? I just want a story. And I think that I don't want to spend too long on it because I spoke about this in my April TBR video, so go back to that video if you kind of want to see more about this conversation. But I think that many of us who are bisexual and have only been in male relationships have a very hard time accepting that we are bisexual, or more so coming out to others as being bisexual because of the conversation of, yeah, but you're with a man. And like, you know, your sexuality is only based on how you are perceived by others as opposed to how you perceive yourself. And that is a huge issue in both communities. Straight, queer, whatever, bisexual women, especially those of us who are in male relationships, constantly question our own sexuality because of others questioning our sexuality all the time. Wonder if we're queer enough, or we're constantly trying to prove that we are, or we're put in a position or in a spotlight to prove that we are. And a lot of that also to do with the fact that, like, you know, heteronormative society sexualizes women who are with women, but at the day are doing it for the gaze of a man. So there's so much in that. But the main point is I really wanted to read a romance that had that dynamic. I heard about Small Change. I had found it online and it was highly rated. It wasn't that great. I just thought the writing just wasn't amazing. It wasn't grabbing me. And I'm already a tough critic because I don't read a lot of romance. So if it wasn't making me feel like Take a Hint Danny Brown, which, by the way, love Take a Hint Danny Brown, I wanted something like that, where it was, she's bisexual, she's in a male relationship, but I felt like it really, like, talked about it very well and open. So I ended up DNFing it about 10-15% in as well. At this point, I've wasted like two weeks of April, and I'm starting to freak out because I'm like, I've read only one book. This month's like April wrap up is going to be, I read Mary and absolutely loved it, hated everything else I chose. Because the next one up was a nonfiction. I was like, oh no, I have another nonfiction. I just have not been, I didn't vibe with the last one. Maybe it was a bad decision to go outside of my genre, because that's two that I really went out of my genre this month. And this last month, and if anything, it proved that it's either a full-on hit or a full-on miss if I do that. Because anytime I've ever read a romance and loved it, I absolutely love it. Like, to all the boys I loved, that whole series had me in a chokehold. And it's completely different than anything I ever read, period. But I loved it. I still, to this day, will tell anybody, oh, I love that book. I love it, love it, love it. The Take a Hint Danny Brown, absolutely loved it. I will recommend it all day. Other romance novels. So the next book was The Good Enough Job by Simone Stolzoff. I wasn't thinking a lot about it, but I did want to pick this up because it was recommended or talked about by a coworker, and some of the quotes out of the book just seemed to really hit for me. And it was just talking about millennials and why we are experiencing so much burnout, regardless of the fact that a majority of us are working in careers that, you know, we're hobbies, you know, like we're working office jobs. We're not working menial work and stuff. We're more educated than our parents were. We're working jobs that are more, quote unquote, supposedly fulfilling than our parents ever did. And all of us, a good portion of us, are experiencing burnout, are exhausted, hate our jobs, are experiencing self-doubt and issues of self-discovery and all of that. And I was like, this is where I am right now. Right now, I am currently about to leave my job. And it's a big deal because I'm pivoting, and there's this fear that, like, you know, am I making the right decision? While I worked my whole life for this position in an industry that's not necessarily easy to get into, you know, and you're wondering, like, why am I not enjoying this? I should be enjoying this. So I picked up this book. I cannot recommend this book enough to people. It speaks for like 4 or 5 different stories. And I really love that they included many different stories. And there are people of color in this book, which I really did love, because I think that there is a certain pressure and, again, a different conversation for those of us who are people of color. Generational wealth. Like, that is something that is a big conversation and hot topic for those people, like people of color, because of our history. And so I enjoyed and absolutely loved that there were plenty of stories of people of color in the book and their different experiences of how they reached burnout in their careers. So that was another thing I loved. They all, 5 or 6 of them, I'm trying to remember, had very different stories on how they reached where they were in their careers and how they dealt with it and where they are now on the other side. And I just can't recommend it enough. It was 5 stars easily. It really is something. I'm waiting for mine to come in the mail because it's something I know in this time of my life I'm going to have to reread and reference and everything, because it really gives you some of the confidence and the tools necessary to have the words for the conversation around what a lot of us are feeling right now, which is this burnout and everything, regardless of our quote unquote dream jobs and everything, and our relationship to an identity to our jobs and careers, and why that is, and why that's such a huge thing, especially in the US. I was so confused. I was like, this is a nonfiction. It's not even a memoir. Like, I'm giving this 5 stars. I hated the last 2 books, or more so I DNF'd the last 2 books that I was reading. I started off the month strong with nearly a 5 star. At this point, I was just like, we're all over the place. What are we doing? I had basically 1 more week to go in April. And at this point, I basically had 2 DNFs and I had 2 5 stars basically. And so I was just like, what are we going to do for this last week? And I was going to read something else entirely. But I ended up picking up Paperbacks from Hell from the library because I really do want to start reading more paperback horror. I love, and this is something that I'm pivoting into, is book cover design and everything. And I absolutely love the book covers from the 80s and the 70s. It just was a great time. I know this is this is the secondary cover after the movie came out, but even just looking at this cover, it just looks just more exciting. I have another one that's an Agatha Christie novel, and even this one, it's just so the painting on the front of it is just so amazing, and there's something about those covers that is really exciting, and I really want to start reading more paperback horror. One, to do more research around the covers, but also I personally love making the parallels between horror novels and society and where trends in horror go, because I just feel like horror is such a raw reflection of society and where our minds are and where we are politically and everything. It's really a reference to that. And it absolutely delivered on that. I'm waiting for that in the mail now too. Paperbacks from Hell was such an amazing read. I really do recommend it to those people who love to read horror or also are obsessed with the whole idea of the parallels between books and society, or just are big book nerds who want to know information. I really recommend that book. It is so good. It really takes you through the timeline of horror and gives you conversations around the horror to thriller pipeline around the 80s. People didn't want horror novels anymore. Thrillers were happening, which actually informs where we are now as society, where we're having issues with placing things like thriller and horror in certain genres, and why we continue to have that issue, because one, chicken and the egg type of situation. The conversation of 80s tech horror coming up when the Apple computer and computers started to come up in popularity, the fear of technology. Before that, in the 70s, of course, counterculture got really huge, and basically every return, everybody was possessed by the devil. And a lot of that had to do with Rosemary's Baby and The Exorcist bringing horror to the forefront of the mainstream, which is crazy. I know that information now. I'm just yeah, this is why it's this, that, and the other. And it's because of this book. There's plenty of other crazy, paperback novel, type of storylines. It's insane, what people were making back then. And even in comparison to now, people are like, oh, that sounds insane. Man, the 70s, it was the Wild West on what was being presented. And even it talks a bit about the 90s and why Goosebumps novels and Fear Street and these novels took over, because the children YA space that horror was starting to live in was exploding. And while, adult publishing in those genres were actually dying. Like, they were, you know, horror specific publishing houses were starting to close their doors and everything. And that's why Goosebumps and all these novels started to actually explode during that time, because of the lack of adult publishing that was coming out during that time. Crazy things. The cover from Salem's Lot, how like the original artist had actually not put the title Salem's Not Lot on the cover, and they put it on the back so that the artwork was front and center, and it caused booksellers to actually flip the book over because they were confused as to why the title wasn't being shown, and it actually calls for a reprint. So if you ever see an original you'll know it's an original Salem's Lot first publishing, because Salem's Lot will actually not be on the cover. It will just simply be the painting, and Salem's Lot will be on the back. They changed it after the fact. So as a book nerd, I'm just sitting there like, oh, this is amazing. So it was 5 stars. It was so great. Grady Hendrix did such an amazing job writing about all these different things. I think, if anything, I'm more like inclined going into the next part of the year to read more nonfiction that has to do with horror history. And I actually already have a TBR like shelf on my Goodreads that has to do with nonfiction focusing on those topics. But I think that Paperbacks from Hell really fed like that whole idea, like, do I want to do that? Is this going to intrigue me? Absolutely. So I'm expect maybe some more nonfiction, but not memoirs. So just keep that in mind. But that was such a great read, and again, very surprising because it was nonfiction. That was 2 nonfictions that got 5 stars this month, last month. I keep on doing that, so excuse me. But those 2 nonfictions that got 5 stars in April, and then I finished the month with another sleeper. I had really no intention of picking up this book early on in the month. It was kind of sitting there like, this is a maybe. And we were in maybe territory because my main TBR was finished because 2 of them got DNF'd, and that was Fresh Hell. Autumn Crow High's Fresh Hell, and this was by Cameron Chaney. So Cameron Chaney is another booktuber who's at Library Macabre is, I think, his name. I'll put it down below in the description, of course. But he wrote the Autumn Crow series, and there's another book out, but this is the second installment. I wasn't expecting a lot. He's known for his collection of Goosebumps novels and stuff, and so I was expecting this to be very okay, YA Goosebumps type of thing. It is YA, but like on the further end, because he absolutely gets into the gore. These pages are bloody. There is a lot going on. There is witchcraft. There are ghosts. There are serial killers. There's relationships. And it's all taking place during the early 90s. So a lot of this is extremely, extremely interesting if you're trying to get in the nostalgic mood for Halloween. I absolutely recommend you to pick up this book. Now, he does not have the audiobook. I had to read this physically, which tells you that I must have loved this book because I never read any book physically that isn't a short story or whatever that I can finish easily. I loved it. This book, for the synopsis, I think that I didn't cover it in my original one, so I'm going to give a quick synopsis on this one as opposed to the other books that I read. But the synopsis of this essentially is that Bailey is having these nightmares. Her father went missing or was presumed dead during the summer, and ever since then she has been having these really vivid nightmares where she finds herself falling from the sky, breaking to a million pieces, and her body being pulled into her high school by this character on the front, this skeleton varsity guy. No idea who he is. And then she runs into this guy while out with her friend. I think the main thing that I really found really interesting about this book is that it's actually kind of written in 2-3 parts. And it has 2 main characters, which it's kind of a giveaway. You don't tell that's not told on the back of the book. You're only told about Bailey, and so you're not told that you're going to get a second point of view and main character once you get to the book, and that's the best friend Melody. I loved that Cameron had basically changed the whole final girl idea, assumption, stereotype, and everything. you have to read the book to know what I'm talking about. But I think that this was so entertaining. It was so much fun. It really got you in the mood for Halloween. And I just had a ball reading it. I I think I've talked about this so much. I think I talked about it even in my last video. Ever since I've started reading it, I've just been really obsessed with it. It was so much fun. And one thing that I loved about it too is that Cameron Chaney is actually from Ohio as well. And also is from like a town. It's only a few hours out from mine. And this book is actually based on a town that is literally like 30 minutes from my town. So it was very recognizable. Being from Ohio is probably why I'm obsessed with autumn, because I know autumn at its peak. And if you were looking for autumn at its peak, it is not up in New England. It is in Ohio. So I really just felt those vibes. It felt nostalgic for me, not just as reading this book and feeling the 90s nostalgia of growing up during that time, but also just growing up in this space. He based this book off of that town, the background and the scenery of it all, and I could feel it. I could see it, I could feel it, it was amazing. I really, really do recommend that if you're looking for something to get you ready for Halloween or something to even read during the Halloween time, I really recommend you pick up this book. It really is amazing. And speaking of covers, this is an amazing cover. Shout out to the illustrator of this cover. It's really great. I love how it looks like, you know, this is going to age well. This paperback will age very well, and it fits in very, very perfectly with any, if you are a paperback collector, it fits in very perfectly with your collection. So this was just such a ball, and it was such a great way to end. This came in the final hour. I literally finished this on the last day of April, and it came in the final hour, and it was a 5-star. Absolutely. I think I gave it like a 4.5. Again, it's in 5-star territory. I gave it a 4.5 because there were just a few things that I was like, so what happened then? Or there are just a couple of like me being nitpicky. It's not anything to do with like the actual book, just me being a little bit nitpicky. Keep in mind though, I will tell you, and I want to make sure that you know, this is an installment. Which means you are going to have to wait until the next book to come out to know how the final story ends. I'm telling you that because I am not a series reader. I am a one-off reader. I will most definitely be reading the next one installment in this because I really want to know what find out what happens, and if it's anything like the writing in this book, I'm going to be obsessed and love it. But I want to tell you that because I don't think that that's obvious from looking at the cover or looking at the back of the book. And I don't want anybody upset reading this book and going, I've got to wait for another book and everything. So I always like to make sure I tell people if something is ending on a cliffhanger or is a part of an installment and stuff like that, just so that you can go in fully aware. So that was my April. Very weird. It was so weird. I read 2 nonfictions that were hugely amazing. I read, you know, my tried and true horror, which was about an unhinged woman but written by a man, and it was amazing. I read a sleeper of a novel that I thought was going to be a little bit childish but ended up being just like amazing and really got me into the Halloween mood. And I ended up DNFing 2 books, one a romance and one a nonfiction. It was a wild April, but I had honestly a lot of fun, especially doing old school April. It was so much fun to just like watch a lot of nostalgia all month, the movies, the shows, and everything. And it really made me realize how much I miss watching those shows. I think so much comes out now, so many movies and shows, and you don't know how to keep up. I have a running list that there's no way I'll ever keep up with because so much good stuff is coming out, and there's so many different streaming platforms. But I think it's also like good to remember, like sometimes you do have comfort shows, and they're more than just the ones that are like constantly being talked about on Instagram all the time. So I think that I had a lot of fun, and it was great like going down memory lane with a lot of those things. That was my April. We are now in May. And that's why I kept on saying, correcting myself with this month, that month, or whatever. I'm currently filming this, and it is like the 2nd of May. So I'm getting all messed up, but it is Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month. And as y'all know, I love a theme and I love to read diversely, and I use the themes for the month to do so. As well as Dracula Day is during this month, and we'll talk more about that a little bit in just a moment. What I did want to focus on was reading only or mainly Asian and Pacific Islander authors and stories. This seems like it shouldn't be that hard because, especially in the last year or so, East Asian authors and like their popularity has gone up exponentially. Like I've read way more. Let's see here. What just looking at what I have here and just based off of what I remember, I have Severance, amazing, loved it, absolutely obsessed with it. Babel surprised me, but absolutely loved it. The Center, didn't absolutely love it, but I did like the basis of the story. Oh, Natural Beauty by Ling Wan. Everybody's obsessed with it, and it absolutely deserves the obsession. Convenience Store Woman. I respect it and appreciate it. Didn't absolutely love it though. But I think that has more to do with me than the actual writing, to be honest. But the point is that I was like, oh, this shouldn't be that hard. I've read a lot or know of a lot of books on my TBR and stuff that should meet the brief. And this is something that I realized even at the beginning of the month I noticed is, you know, a lot of people are putting out the recommendations for thrillers and horror to celebrate API month, and which is great. I am so happy to see people doing that and just diversifying their bookshelves. That's my main goal. However, what I did notice is that the month is Asian and Pacific Islander. And what I've been seeing is there is a lot of Asian and hardly any Pacific Islander. And I think also that has to do with the fact that a lot of people don't know what that means. And let me be clear, that does not mean Filipino. And that's not to berate anybody. That's something that I learned only a couple of years ago from one of my very close friends being Filipina, as well as having a ton of like other Filipino friends and moving to LA and finding that information out, that a lot of people, majority of people of like Filipino descent, don't really recognize themselves as Pacific Islanders, regardless of the fact that the Philippines is located in the Pacific Ocean. Culturally and heritage-wise, they do not recognize themselves with Asian and Pacific Islander culture and heritage. They have a lot, they just don't feel like that's their space. And that's also why they enacted Filipino Heritage Month in October. So note that if you are sitting here and you're going, oh, I'm going to read this Filipino author for AAPI month, know that you can save that book for October and everything, but it's not for this month. And that, I think, is the misnomer that's kind of gotten a lot of people a little bit confused on what to represent in their recommendations for Pacific Islander, because I noticed it a lot even when I was trying to Google and find more Pacific Islander horror and thriller novels, and I couldn't. And a lot of that had to do with the fact that, like, I think a lot of people are confused that those who are Filipino really don't recognize themselves as that. But one thing that I was struggling to find was just Pacific Islander specific. And that was something that I even noticed when I first made my TBR. I originally had 3 books on this TBR, knowing that Dracula Week was coming up and that was going to add 3 more books on top of those 3 books. And I'm usually a 4 to 5 book max type of reader during any given month. And I didn't want to give myself things that I just couldn't finish. And what I noticed is that I had no Pacific Islander like representation on that TBR. One thing I did find though was that it was extremely hard to easily like just to find, like, type in, oh, Pacific Islander authors who write horror or thriller or speculative fiction or whatever, and get, like, you know, easy recommendations. Even for, like, if you put an API horror recs or whatever, a majority were not like Pacific Islander. And that's a big problem. That's a glaring problem. I shouldn't have had to like kind of dig as hard as I had to dig in order to read these novels, because the thing is that I was looking, and if you can't find them when you're really trying to research, what makes you think people are going to come across them even offhandedly if they're not trying to look, which is the majority of people. So that was kind of my thing that I wanted to bring up. If you have any recommendations of Pacific Islander reads, I would absolutely love for you to put them down in the comments, because I really do want to find some more horror thriller reads to cover like that like culture and that heritage, because I think that that's so strange. I want to read some Hawaiian horror. So let's get into it. I think that maybe is a good like segue into my TBR, Island Witch. I'm really excited to read it because it's more of a gothic possession type of read. And I'm really excited because it has, I have a feeling that it's going to be something similar to Mary, where it's like there's this entity living inside of our main character, and there's been a lot of deaths happening in her village, and they're blaming her father, who is a demon priest. It has to talk about colonization and Christianity coming into the village to colonize and everything, and demonizing traditional religion. I think I'm very much excited to read about that. But I think that she may have something inside of her as well who is causing these deaths, because she is having premonitions and nightmares that kind of precede these deaths. And I guess it kind of talks about like where that story kind of goes from there. I am excited. It is highly rated, and it's something different from what I usually read personally. I feel like it's very, I mean, it is. It's very different. Like, the setting itself is already different, but I don't think I read a lot of traditional possession type of books and everything, and I think that this is going to be a great segue into that, like, genre and stuff. So that's Island Witch. I'm really excited to read that one. I'm also going to be reading The Vegetarian by Han Kang. I am really, really excited to read this. I bought this book, and the Barnes & Noble employees, I had two tell me, just so you know, it's not about a vegetarian. And I was like, I kind of gathered. One absolutely freaked out. She said, this one is so amazing. It's so good. It's amazing. I can't wait. If you like Night Bitch, if you like Assert Hunger, if you like, you're gonna love this book. And I was like, well, I love both of those. So if you love Bunny, you're gonna love this book. I was like, I absolutely love all three of those books. So that's a great recommendation. The other one, she said, yes, I was disturbed, and I don't think that I realized what I was gonna be reading. It's amazing, but I don't think I knew I was going to be reading. That's still an amazing review for me. So I'm so excited to be reading this. I'm actually going to be reading this with Reading Riley this month for her book club, the Midnight Society book club. And I'm really excited for this. It's approachable, which is great, because I want to make sure that I mean, we're going to be live stream talking about it, and am I nervous? Absolutely. Am I excited? Most definitely, because I absolutely love Elizabeth over on Reading Riley. But I'm excited. Both of those reviews were like amazing reviews. This one also has to do with a woman having nightmares. She starts having very vivid, bloody nightmares, and that cause her to want to go live a more plant-based life. Something having to do with society and her family having issue with this. And I think that she starts to kind of like go spiral too far into this plant-based living lifestyle. I honestly don't know much more than that, and I'm excited. That's enough for me. I don't need to know anything else. That's a great. I'm having vivid dreams that are so bloody. They've caused me to like go into plant-based living, and now I've taken it too far and I've completely spiraled, and I'm having issues with my family and power obsession and money. Yes. Everyone I've heard has said this is amazing, and it looks like this is about 200 pages. That's a perfect length for me. That's a perfect length to go down a spiral for me. Once we hit about 400, I think we've gone too far. So I'm really excited to pick this up. I'm trying to figure out if this is going to be the next book that I read, because I have already started, and I'm honestly almost finished, and it was been that great. Chlorine by Jade Song. I know y'all are probably sick of hearing about this book, but it is so good. She gets all the flowers. I think that it is so great. If you're looking for sapphic, if you're looking for body horror, if you're looking for nostalgia, if you're a woman looking for coming of age story, if you're looking for unhinged teenage girl, if you're looking for conversations in regards to experiencing society as a woman that's still a girl type of situation, conversations of growing up, conversations of grooming, conversations of being an athlete and what that entails at a young age, all these things. If you're obsessed with mermaids, read this book. Absolutely read this book. I am 1 hour away from the ending, and I cannot wait to see how this ends, because I thought what I just read last night was the ending. It's not. And so I have 1 more hour. I have no idea what we're going to fit in this hour or what understanding, because I still don't have a clear understanding of where we are as far as like what the end concept of this story is going to be. And I'm so excited. I told you all of that and did not tell you what the book is about. The book is about our main character, Rin. She is a teenager. I think she's second gen, or second or first gen Chinese American. And she is growing up in, I think it's Detroit or no, it's Pennsylvania. She's near Philly, and she's growing up in the suburbs. And she's on a team, a swimming team and everything, who is like practicing for the Olympics. Well, they're not practicing. Basically, they're star athletes. They're star athlete swimmers. She's obsessed with mermaids. She's also obsessed with her best friend, Kathy, who she is in love with. Kathy is also in love with her, but she doesn't know that because they're young and they don't know how to express that to another woman yet. There are these conversations about that, and you're getting it from both point of views. One, Kathy is telling afterwards, and I feel like Ren is also telling the story from her first person point of view after the fact as well, but I'm trying to see where they meet in the middle, kind of. And basically all of this is about the transformation of Ren turning into a mermaid. I do not think that Ren actually turns into a mermaid. I think that something happens. I feel like something, I don't really want to give you too much because I really think that you need to go into this book blind like I have, because it feels like it slowly builds into this insane fever dream. Reading it feels like an insane fever dream, but also at the same time, it feels so... Growing up is an insane fever dream. Like, the years between, like, you entering, like, 8th grade to 10th grade are insane fever dream moments. Like, they are insane points of time. And I think reading this book really brought me back. Also, like, it's I think the Jade song's like 28, which is crazy. It's insane. But it's also written from that point of view of that nostalgia as well, if you grew up during that time frame, which just feels so close to home. So I recommend it. I know that everybody in the world has recommended this book, said read it, have rated it high. She absolutely deserves it. Not to say that this is a preemptive review. I don't know how it's going to end, but I'm just telling you, I might as well tell you right now how much I've read of it. It's so great. So I've been reading that. That is one of my, I'm reading that first. I think I'm going to read The Vegetarian second. Then I think I'm going to then read my next book, and I'm going to leave Island Witch for the end of the month, because I am going to be reading Dracula. Let me get into my next read, and then we'll go into the Dracula stuff. You see how I'm working that in real time? We're working in real time. My next read after I read The Vegetarian is going to be Yellowface. Yes, yes, yes. Everybody is probably sitting there right now and going, okay, great. So you're basically just reading the most popular Asian authors that you ever found. Yes, because it's been sitting on my TBR. Leave me alone. I'm reading Yellowface because I am actually going into the book publishing industry, and I have been told by quite a few people to read this book beforehand because it actually is very on point, which is both scary and exciting. And yeah, I mean, R.F. Kuang is also, she's 27. Can we all like take a moment to realize that R.F. Kuang was like 26 when she wrote Babel? What? That's wild. So anyways, if you've not heard of Yellowface, I don't know what you've been doing, but it is about two authors, June and Athena? Yeah, Athena. Athena ends up passing in a freak accident while she's on her rise. She is Asian and her friend is white. June is not doing as well because, as she puts it, no one wants to hear about basic white girl stories. Well, Athena was on the edge of finishing up her best masterpiece ever. And June was aware of it, and so she ends up stealing it. She ends up getting it published, and her publisher actually ends up basically yellow washing her. They end up basically like putting her out there as Juniper Song instead of June, which is her real name and everything. And people basically end up assuming, of course, that she is Asian because they basically put her in yellow face. See where we got there? But of course that starts to come out, and what everything happens from there, and that the last sentence is like what she's willing to do to keep fame or whatever the case is. So I don't know. I've heard a lot of people who don't read horror read this, so I don't know how unhinged it may get by the end on like that whole what she's willing to do thing, but I'm excited to read it. Everybody in the world says it's amazing. Glad to finally be picking it up. I will be the judge on whether or not it's amazing. But I do think that it's appropriate for me to be reading during this month. Regardless of the fact that it's such a popular book, I can't always have like sleepers as recommendations, guys. So I will be reading this hopefully by maybe midway through the month, because I would like to finish it before I start my new gig, because it was recommended to me by somebody who I'll be working with. So we have that. The 26th of May is Dracula Day, and I've been working on this for a while. I'm actually going to be doing a buddy read with Jackie's Spooky Shelf over on Instagram. I'll link her down below. She has great taste in books. We've been talking about this since February, back when I basically apparently dropped some bomb where people didn't know this, but that the original vampire novel, American vampire novel, is actually called The Black Vampire, which is about an ex-slave turned vampire who seeks revenge on the slave master who killed him. A lot of people were like, I had no idea this existed. And it was published, just absolutely years before Dracula was even thought about. So a lot of people go like Dracula really gathered a lot of inspiration from this book, as well as Carmilla. Yes, I'm sure a lot of people have heard about this, but Carmilla really is the story that Dracula took from in order to make his novel. Bram Stoker to make his novel. And I think that this has become more and more common knowledge as the years have gone by about this. I really want to read both Carmilla and The Black Vampire are novellas. I really want to knock both of those out while I'm simultaneously knocking out Dracula. Look at this special cover edition. I bought this and I still can't believe this was $14. How was this edition $14? I'll never know. But I had gone to Halloween Town over in Burbank, and they have a book section, and I saw this as well as a special edition of Frankenstein, and absolutely had to have it. This was Penguin Random House had released these special Technicolor editions of their classic books, and this was just amazing. Let's take a moment. Let's give it up for the front of the dress. And let's hear it for the back of the dress, because honestly, it's also really cool. If look at it, you might miss it. Yes, that is a bat hitting in his skull, which is just really cool. I think that, like, yeah, you'll miss it if you're not looking for it, you know? So really, really excited to finally read this. And Jackie has Dracula Daily, which, if you don't know, Dracula is written kind of in journal entries. And so her version of Dracula actually is a day-by-day account where you can like read the journal entries day by day, and you can kind of feel like, oh, like I'm reading it as he's writing it and everything. I don't have that version, but my version, of course, does say like the days that these journal entries are made and stuff. So I've kind of like marked it where I need to be by the end of this weekend, so that me and her can basically go back and forth on reading certain entries, and we don't get too far ahead, and we can like kind of nerd out about this vampire that everybody seems to love. So while I'm doing that, the plan is that I should finish this by Dracula Day to do a review on, and also to do a video on. I really want to do on Dracula Day is on a Sunday. I release on Sundays, so I thought it'd be cool to maybe do a vampire inspired video. There's a sneak peek. See, look, you watch to the end of the video, you get some information. So as I'm reading this day by day, I also want to finish Carmilla, which is a sapphic vampire story that basically is slightly based, I mean, Dracula basically based his obsession tale over that as well. Carmilla's are basically the same. Isolated in a remote mansion and a central European forest, Laura longs for companionship until a carriage accident brings another young woman into her life, the secretive and sometimes erratic Carmilla. As Carmilla's actions become more puzzling and volatile, Laura develops bizarre symptoms, and as her health goes into decline, Laura and her father discover something monstrous. Carmilla's a vampire. She's obsessed with Laura, probably. There's a whole situation here between the two of them. I'm so excited to finally read it. Also, it's edited by Carmen Maria Mercado, so I'm really excited about that because, as we know, come September, I will be reading, I'm letting you know right now, I will be reading a Carmen Mercado, like, book, because her essay, and it came from the closet, on Jennifer's body and bisexuality, blew me out the water. I was just like, okay, I'm obsessed with you. I have to read you. So, yeah, let's also get into this cover, because I specifically wanted this cover. They had a hardcover, and it was the same price as the paperback, but it just was not impressive, as I've seen this cover, and I wanted this. I was like, when I will get this book, it will be this cover. Look at these bats. The bats, the little teeth marks down here. It is just, this is quality. This is a quality paperback. Absolutely loved it. Oh, this is something I didn't know. There are these illustrative pages throughout that just look so amazing. Like, I'm so happy I got this version. Like, let's look at this. Let's take a moment. That is amazing. Love it. Love it. I don't care what the book is about, but this is just so good. This is, I think, yeah, it's 132 pages. Oh, no, like 140 pages. I may end up reading this during our reading sprints because of how short it is. I don't know. I'm going back and forth between this and The Vegetarian. I think it'll be this because I think that I could possibly knock this out in one sitting, because our reading sprints are usually 3 hours, so that would make sense for me. We will see if it'll be that or The Black Vampire, which is also a novella. I am waiting for that to come in the mail because it's not available on audiobook, but it's also a novella. And actually, like, even shorter than a novella, I think it may be like, you know, maybe it's a short story or an essay. I don't know how they like do it, a pamphlet or what have you. So that is my plans for May. It's a little bit all over the place. I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm excited, but I'm also scared that I've put too much dip on my chip. I think that it's doable. I think I have a lot of novellas this month. The Vegetarian, The Black Vampire, and Carmilla are all novellas. Dracula's thick, but it's written in portions that are digestible for me to read throughout the entire month. So I think that that's possible. I already got a head start on Chlorine, and I'm almost done, so we're good there. Yellowface is really the only real book I'm reading that's, like, you know, a little bit more substantial. I think, oh, and Island Witch. So yeah, I think I can do it. You hear the confidence in my voice? I think I can do it. We will see. I am excited. In any case, I'm excited for some really great stories. I've already started off the month really well, from what you can tell from my, like, little mini preemptive review of Chlorine. I think reading about vampires alongside with some weird stories is gonna be for a great time. I think what's gonna probably be, like, the thing that holds me up is maybe, like, how, like, in the weeds and, like, English talking some of these books maybe get, because y'all know I don't read a lot of Gothic or so I think that that's going to maybe be my biggest thing and hurdle to get over, that and how many physical reads I have this month. I think we're gonna do it. I think I'm gonna have time. I think we just gotta go into it, and we will check in if it gets a little crazy. Thank you for watching. See, if you did enjoy today's video, subscribe down below. Tell me what you guys are reading this month. If you also are, your TBR is celebrating AAPI month and you've got some great reads. Like I said, please give me some recommendations. If you have some specific Islander recommendations in the horror and thriller specifically genres, I would absolutely appreciate that, to put on my TBR to read later on this year. Like I said, Summerween, that's hosted by Gabby Reads, that's coming up. I think that she just made her announcement video today, and it's coming up in July. And I don't think that July has a very specific, like theme, which is good because it's nice to kind of have these moments where I can get through some novels that aren't necessarily specific to, like, you know, June I'm going to be reading a lot of queer novels and everything and only focusing on that. And I think my TBR sometimes just needs to kind of get, like, I think I'm going to read Gone Girl come July. This feels like a summer thriller read, but like, when would I read this unless it was in next March, you know? So I think I'm looking forward to kind of having a little time to freestyle it and not be so like focused and mood read it out a little bit. But if you're looking forward to any of that, if you're looking forward to hearing how all these books go for me during the rest of this month, please keep on following and subscribe down below. I'm excited. I'm excited and scared. We will see. I'll see y'all later. Bye.